Mahito. I am you. I really wanted to reject you. I wanted to pretend I didn't understand what you said. But that's different now. I'll just kill you. And if you're ever reborn again as a new curse, I'll kill you then too. Change your name and appearance, I'll still kill you again and again. I don't need meaning or a reason anymore. Maybe there will be some meaning to be found. From my actions several centuries after I'm dead. And I'm sure that I'm just one giant cog in the wheel. And I'll keep on killing curses until I rust away. Because that seems to be my role in this war.
When talking about what makes a great character, everyone has their own subjective opinion on the matter. And for many, it isn't so much about having one specific quality as it is having an amalgamation of them, which come together to create their own unique, ideal personification. A lot of the time though, all it takes for a character to be favored less by an individual is for one of those many traits to be absent and or skew to a conflicting direction. One such trait is a character's tolerance to their opposition, or what I like to call the dichotomy of sympathy and hostility. This is the difference between the types of characters who are more likely to sympathize with their enemies or give them a second chance, and characters who show no form of leniency, typically dealing with their opponents without ever showing a shred of compassion. In short, the distinction between the merciful and the merciless. When thinking of the former, characters who come to mind might be Goku, Batman, Spider-Man, people will beat the ever-living shit out of their foe and criminally disrespect them, but not kill them because killing equals bad and we know like bad. Then there's those whom belong to the latter archetype, who don't really mind making sure there's nothing left of the enemy they're fighting after they're finished with them. Now, I'm not here today to argue, debate, or give you a definitive answer as to what type of attitude is better for a character to have, as that is a highly subjective topic in and of itself, which everyone has their own preference on. Instead, I'm here to express just how much of a gray area it is, as opposed to the black and white that many people make it out to be, and why both sides can be equally appreciated and well received depending on the situation. The idea for this whole video came about when I was randomly scrolling through Twitter, yes, I still call it Twitter, on some random day at some random time. Being very active in the anime and manga community on there, as you could probably tell, I saw a post comparing two characters, Naruto and Ichigo from the shows Naruto and Bleach respectively. Now those two fandoms go at it for different reasons all the time, so this was nothing new to me. But the subject matter of this discourse was very interesting, as it could be applied to pretty much any character from any series with an overcoming the monster type plot. The idea of the discussion was that one of the reasons Ichigo might outclass Naruto as a character is due to his willingness to do away with any villain who does wrong by him without any hesitation. Similarly, many would say that Naruto's nature to view things from his enemy's perspective made him the better, more sensible character. However, as I mentioned before, it's not so simple. You see, while it is true that each of these characters lean more towards one side of the spectrum than the other, Naruto towards sympathy and Ichigo towards hostility, both of them have had their fair share of instances in which they turn heel and give an opposite reaction than normal. For example, in Bleach, there are many races that are simply subsets of humans with powers. Whenever fighting people of this nature, Ichigo has a tendency to hold back due to viewing them as human and being less willing to take their life, unlike Hollows and Arankars, which are essentially just corrupt spirits. As for Naruto, he tends to not reserve anything against people he realizes he can't redeem. In these situations, he'd basically be talking to a brick wall and putting his own life and the lives of others at risk while he's at it. Anyhow, the idea that a character's inclination to show mercy can shift depending on the situation is not unique to these two individuals. Like I said, there are a great deal of characters who all have their own level of temperament to this kind of thing. Though, I think the most fascinating aspect about this topic, and what made me want to create this video in the first place, is just how diverse both the reasonings and reactions to an antagonist can be. This is what makes the concept as gray of an area as it is. In the case of Naruto, Ichigo, and most other characters, what usually decides whether they will be more hostile or sympathetic to their enemies is their values, which dictate how they judge character, and the weight of their own actions. Because if you think about it, there's a subtle differentiation between a person who chooses not to kill because it would make him no better than his enemies, like Batman, and a person who chooses not to kill because he understands the value of life, like Goku. Interestingly enough though, there also exist characters that choose not to kill out of hostility. This is where the lines begin to get a bit blurred. Take Luffy from the popular series One Piece. As simple-minded as he may be, there's actually some layers to his character that you could argue go pretty deep, and how he handles his adversaries is one of them. In an interview, the creator of the popular series, Eiichiro Oda, was asked why Luffy doesn't kill his enemies, to which he responded,
In this era, men live by their beliefs, and risk their lives to defend them. Luffy shatters the beliefs of his enemies by defeating them. For them to suffer defeat and to have their beliefs destroyed is as bad as death.
In this way, Luffy shows hostility by allowing his foes to live with the weight of their failures, as a life where one remains unable to accomplish their grandest dreams is one that many would consider not worth living, which is kinda realistic and relatable in a way. I mean, a lot of people out there have failed to realize a fundamental goal in their life and ended up questioning what their purpose was, and if they even still had one. It doesn't stop there though. Some have been made to live with the weight of their failures, others the weight of their sins, some fated to spend the remainder of their life on the arduous task of dedicating the rest of their existence, atoning for their wrongdoings. The pain of such an outcome is usually a byproduct of a character's hostility, but there are rare examples of this that come from a place of sympathy. Regarding Naruto, his choosing not to kill is usually done to reach an understanding with his foes and convince them to walk a path of non-violence. And though he might not always consider how big of a burden this can be on his enemy, he does think it a better alternative to death. In his mind, the chance to redeem oneself by leaving a positive impact on the world and bringing it together should feel far more freeing than anything. This is a common theme throughout the series in general, where villains who are allowed to live end up using their lives for good, as opposed to One Piece, where they either become a husk of what they once were, or in very rare cases, like Luffy himself, get back on their feet to fulfill their highest potential. On the other hand, when someone chooses to kill, it can be done out of arrogance. Early Vegeta from the series Dragon Ball Z is a great illustration of this, as he is shown doing away with his challengers with a smile on his face, a stark contrast to his son Trunks, particularly his future variant, who gains no delight from asserting dominance on his opposition and kills solely to avert potentially world-ending threats. There's also a certain magic in characters like the Punisher, who isn't necessarily a hero as much as he is a vigilante or an anti-hero, and acknowledges that he isn't a good person for the very reason that he does kill, despite the fact that he has occasionally indirectly helped people through his actions, and has people who would say otherwise about him. That's not all though. Remember how earlier I said that there are characters who choose to keep their adversaries alive out of hostility? Well, to that same end, there are also characters who choose to kill out of sympathy. These are the type of characters who use killing as a form of putting people out of their misery, either metaphorically or literally. More often than not, these characters end up being the villains or antagonists themselves, at least the types who attempt to rationalize their actions through convincing others that their intentions are just. Think of characters like Thanos, who after witnessing the fall of his home planet due to lack of resources, subsequent to having his recommendation of killing off half the life on the planet ignored, makes the decision to gather the Infinity Stones to wipe out half the life in the entire universe. Or a Killmonger, who wanted the best for his land and people, and was willing to kill people to reach that end. Nagato, who even Naruto had difficulty responding to when asked how he would go about finding true everlasting peace in the world, after explaining that he only does what he does because of what bigger villages like Naruto's Hidden Leaf Village did to his smaller village hidden in the rain. Or Madara, who is essentially just an extension of Nagato on a grander scale, who would rather force the entire world's population into a never-ending dream rather than continue to struggle through a seemingly never-ending conflict, and was beyond prepared to take the lives of the over 80,000 shinobi who opposed him. And then of course there are rare cases where a protagonist, such as Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, sympathizes with those he kills in the event that they regret the actions they committed while alive. Anyways, like I said before, as you can probably tell by now, the response to an adversary can differ greatly and is dependent on many more factors than we typically consider. It isn't as simple as characters who kill being superior because of their willingness to commit to the fight for their cause, or characters who don't being superior due to being more empathetic to the actions of their antagonist, because not every character who kills condones the act of killing, and not every character who doesn't understands their enemy's motives. Furthermore, it's hard to find a character who can stand central to all these principles while also staying true to themselves. Having that said, I was able to think of one character who I believe is capable of doing so, and stands as a very good representation of the dichotomy of sympathy and hostility as a whole. That character, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail of this video, is Yuji Itadori. Now, I don't want to turn this video into a Jujutsu Kaisen / Yuji love letter or anything. I'll just leave that to Broken Ronin. But I do want to talk about how brilliant I think his writing is relating to this particular topic. I know a lot of people don't see Yuji as an especially interesting character, and I've even had a friend or two tell me that they think he's an outright boring MC. Now, say what you want about him, but like I said, the guy is a great depiction of someone who has the self-awareness and emotional intelligence required to recognize when to show mercy, when not to show mercy, and why he chooses whichever path he does at any given moment. It's also a huge part of his development, as he makes this transformation from sort of a starry-eyed optimist into a resolute realist. When we look at some of the people he's been forced to fight in his duty as a sorcerer, we can clearly observe a variety of different reactions. Whenever fighting Mahito, for example, arguably the most dangerous of the disaster curses, who are known for having higher level intellect than most curses, Yuji is seen constantly trying to connect a reason to Mahito's actions of violence committed against humans. He does this because he simply can't value taking something as valuable as a life for no reason at all. It isn't until their final encounter in Shibuya, after being forced to kill hundreds if not thousands of innocents by the evil being residing within him, and witnessing the death of one of his teachers and near death of one of his closest friends by Mahito's hand, that he stops trying to find a reason, as shown by the quote at the beginning of this video. Another example is that of when he fights Mahito's transfigured humans, where at first he struggles to kill them because he knows that they're human beings and not curses. He eventually accepted that he'd need to take their lives because if left unchecked, they'd only wreak even more havoc. He also did it as a form of sympathy, knowing that there was pretty much zero chance of Mahito ever showing mercy and returning them to how they were before, rather than letting them suffer in such disfigured forms. You could argue though that it never even actually got easy for him, even when he did accept that he'd have to kill them. He's even seen gauging the value of his own life throughout the series in this way too, being more than willing to die out of hostility for Sukuna, and at the exact same time, die for the sake of his friends and the rest of the world. Fundamentally, he does a good job of showing that taking a life can be for any reason, whether deemed good, bad, or neutral, and that doing so can branch off into differing results and reactions based on where you stand and your own values and beliefs. This is the essence of the dichotomy of sympathy and hostility. It's an area of discussion with a lot of nuance, but it's probably for the best that you don't rack your brain on it too much. Of all the hundreds of thousands of fictional characters ever created, they each have their own way of making decisions. To try to understand them all would be tantamount to trying to understand the thought process of everyone you come across in life, which I shouldn't have to say is virtually impossible. That said, next time you watch a character spare a life with mercy, or take one without batting an eye, try to consider the position they're in and their values. I'm sure you'll see their action from a different angle and in a new light. And as always, this has been Tenta. Stay easy, guys.
Maybe I should just kill him. Take the light from his eyes. I'm the shadows after all. I could take this and slide it across his throat, easy. Like opening a letter. Inside could be anything. Could be a court summons, could be a check, could be a bill. There's one way to be certain. I had the opportunity tonight. My weight held him down. No witnesses. I felt the idea twitch like a fly. I thought I'd swatted. He'll never change. He'll kill again, directly or indirectly. Killing him would stop it. At least, killing him would stop him. It's only logical. He had it coming. I am the shadows, after all. But I let Arkham take him. There's no killing him, even if I kill him. His cackle will reverberate at a low frequency in the alleyways, its echo preserved in our bones like an insect in amber. The echo was always there, even before the initial sound. The problem runs deep. If the solution was as simple as killing a man or two or millions, there would be no problem at all. God knows we've been long down that road. I need to believe in change, for myself, for everyone. If he can't, how can Gotham? Gotham is the Joker. The Joker is Gotham. And I am the shadows. Funny thing about the shadows, they guide the eye to the light. I can only hope to do the same.